We got a 2015 Toyota Highlander, and today we're replacing the lower control arms and we're replacing the front struts. On the control arm side, it's going to be the same as any other Toyota from I believe 2002. So the control arm requires that you remove the engine mount because the bolt is behind it. So I have videos on there on my channel on the Toyota Sienna. It's the same setup. On the strut side, the only difference that I see so far is the cowling has to come off for you to get access to the upper bolts or nuts. So that's what I'm getting ready to do, just to remove this whole entire cowling. You got two pins at the end, push pins, like these ones right here, but smaller. You just push the top of it in and it releases it. And these are just like, they just go in there. So you just kind of pry this up all alongside here, all the way to the end. Now you got some type of play. Next thing, you want to remove the 14mm nuts on the wipers. You know, once you get those off, remove the wipers and remove the cowling. And then after that, you can gain access to those bolts. I usually I try to remove the braking system, meaning the calipers and the rotors. In this instance, the rotor is pretty frozen on there. I don't want to take a chance of, you know, hitting this with a hammer. I tried it with the mallet. It wasn't budging. You can see the state of the rust here, which means that I will not be able to remove the ball joint, because to remove the ball joint, unfortunately, you have to be able to remove the axle. And judging by the state of this axle, that's not going to happen. So I'm not even going to waste time going there. Anybody who knows these cars know that the ball joint never fails. I mean, this is just Toyota ball joint. Well, not never, but you know, that's, yeah. So I'm going to just leave the ball joints there. There's going to be 3 bolts at the bottom and 2 nuts, 1 bolt. Like I said, I have a lot of videos on this type of repairs. So that's what I'm going to do. And the reason why we're replacing that is because of that right there. It's pretty spent. So let's go ahead and I'm going to elect to remove the struts first, only because then I have a lot more space to deal with the control arm. Again, you know, you cannot remove that nut there all the way up there because of, unfortunately, the CV axle. So I mean, I'll give it a shot, but I don't think it's going to happen. Okay, so the cowling is off. Now you gain access to what I said before, the top bolts, the 3 nuts for that strut. I mean, you can do this pretty bad. Look at the rust coming out of the bearing. Yeah, so again, the cowling is, like I said, pretty straightforward. There's nothing, no hitting, anything like that. They made it pretty simple. Once you get the fasteners in the front, you know, the clips up, and it gets loose. Once you remove the wipers, pretty much just pull it towards yourself, and then that's about it. Just right there. And yeah, so I usually put the wipers the way they're going to go on the car. Like, one to the far left is going to be the driver, and then to the right is going to be the passenger, so I don't get confused when it's time to put it back together. So there we are. I'm gonna now come down here, just like any strut job, you know, remove the sway bar link, which looks kind of crusty there. We're going to use some type of wire wheel to remove some of those things off, and then remove this nut, this bolt right there holding the brake lines to it. Remove the speed sensor so it doesn't get, you know, pulled as you doing your stuff there, and remove the 2 nuts. I'm going to take this brake assembly and trying to set it on the ground if it is long enough. If it's not, I'm going to use a tire underneath the car, and I'm going to rest this whole assembly right on top of the tire so it doesn't get, you know, it doesn't basically hang on the weight of this thing, which could cause internal damage there. Then they are side to side, making sure we got the same exact part, especially when it comes to the sway bar link position there, and also the length overall from here to here versus here to here, because sometimes I've seen those that they're not done correctly, and now you gotta use some angle grinder to cut some things off, and it becomes a nightmare. Because these are ordered online, so if they're not what they're supposed to be, well, too bad for the mechanic, because then you got to be here fiddling with it, or you got to put everything back together and you got to wait until the new parts come on, maybe 2 or 3 weeks. Okay, so now we're done with the strut. That's the easier part of the job, I believe. Not a whole lot of fiddling to do. This was kind of heavy because I couldn't take this off, but you can just grab it from the bottom with 2 hands, bring it up to line up with the strut. You can always move the strut side to side to align it, and then you can put your knee under this under the steering knuckle and just hold it up like this with your knee. That's what I do. And then the weight is off your body like that, you know, meaning your hands. You're free to put your bolts in and whatnot. So really not a big deal once you get the technique down. All right, moving on. Now we're going to do the control arm on the side, which requires that we jack up the engine. So I already have the jack underneath with a piece of wood, block of wood right there underneath the pan. We're getting ready to jack it up, but first things first, let's release the torque strut mount, and hopefully it'll come off without touching these brake lines. So let's see. One of those applications I did before on a Toyota, I know we did touch the brake lines, but this one looks like it's going to clear them, so they fixed that blunder. A lot of these small mistakes, you know, people would make, the engineers, as they put in the, I don't know if it's the engineers or the installers, but definitely some small errors like that will make the job go a lot longer than it should. Alright, let me not make this a long video. I'm going to cut it off, remove this. I already removed this upper one, so remove this one, take this mount out. Alright, so the mount is out of our way, right there resting. Now we're going to come down to the motor mounts to the right side of the engine, and we're going to take this nut off. So I believe this is a 19mm. Alright, it's going to be stout, so beware. Okay, this one's not too bad. Okay, so ultimately, to be honest, I don't have to remove that, because the technique that I'm going to use is to remove the bracket itself at the back of it, which I'm going to remove that bolt, and then there's one hidden right there behind it at the bottom, right there. That's the kind of hardest one, but not too hard. You can just find, I'll show you the setup once I get it out. So, and then you got, of course, the 317mm nuts at the bottom. Usually they have a cover. I'll just show you. Again, all Toyota is the same when it comes to this setup. So you have this cover right here, I guess, for water, so it doesn't rust out, you know. So we're gonna take a pick. Sometime, if you don't be careful, you can push the cover in and then you can't retrieve it anymore. So we're gonna go and do the procedure together. So I'm gonna go in there. I'm gonna elect to actually do this, put a hole in it slightly and just pry it back. Because sometimes when you go on the side, you can succeed or you can just make a mistake and now you have a blunder on your hand. But again, now we're gonna get a 17mm deep. We got 3 of them, one here. I don't know if you're gonna show right there. One in there and one in there. So I'm going to show you my setup. I got my flex ratchet right there. Make sure it's set on off or removal before you get in there. It helps. And just look at how I laid it across. You're not going to have a lot of swinging room, of course, but you just want to break the bolt loose initially. And once you break it loose, then the rest you can figure it out. So I'm going to need 2 hands because I want to maintain the ratchet straight so I don't round off the bolt. Like I said, it's not a lot of room up there. Maybe you can even try to see if you can do it from down here, as in, let me show you, if it's possible. I doubt it. Actually, is it even possible? Okay, yeah, well, kind of possible. You see what I'm saying there? Right? You can see my ratchet right here. So that also could be a solution to you. Whatever works better, but you need to get yourself one of these flexing ratchet. The head got to be flexing, and it really helps. So let me go ahead and attack that bolt. Turns out this method from the bottom up is actually the best method right now. So I'm able to get a nice grip on it and a nice little swing of the ratchet. You know, of course, I gotta hold it with my other hand so it doesn't pop out, but definitely do it from the bottom. Okay, just like that, from the bottom. Let me show you where I'm going. And right on. You see that between the oil pan and the subframe, if it'll show properly. Why is my setup between the oil pan and the subframe? All right, let me go ahead and so I got it loose most of the way. So basically just running it out now by hand. That's, like I said, from the bottom is definitely the better method, unless you come off with a different method altogether. That is so far the best. This one, of course, a straight shot. You know, get your impact, whatever you need to do with your extension. That one, slight angle right there. Probably would have been better to do this before I put the axle on. I mean the strut on. But I got tools, so I got my wobbly right there at the bottom. So I'm gonna try to get a shot right there. Might have to use two hands just to put the wobbly back on there, but you get what I'm saying. Let me see if I can do it. There you go. It's on now. Look at this. All the way there. So now let me just try to force it in. And that's all it took. And then we're gonna release. Now actually now I'm gonna jack up the engine just a little bit to match that. So in fact, let me see if I can just set, well, I can't, damn it. I wish I could set it up to where you guys all gotta move. You can watch the action from here, but let me just flip it. Just watch the action from there. It's not very solid, but it may do. Now I'm going to come back and release this one right here, all the way out. Alright, now it's completely loose. Let's release, remove those two bolts. And just check, we're going to check to see if they're all the same length before we pile them up. So this and that are equal length, as you can see. The first one that was on the bottom, same thing, all equal length, so no worries there. All right, so we got that loose, as you can see. Now I can release the one on top, I guess. I could have done that, but let me see. Can I swing it? There you go. And kind of fiddle with a little bit, and it comes off. Just like that, as an assembly. That was a good shot, guys. You got to be honest. Tell the truth. That was a great shot. I'm proud of myself. Anywho, so continue on. Again, this was only to expose that big blunder from Toyota. So let's go ahead and knock this one. Is I believe a 22 and a 19mm on that side right there, which is this bolt, if I'm not mistaken. 19, 22, and 22, and then you got the 317 from the ball joint side. That's how I like to do it. You can choose to try and remove the ball joint along with the control arm. This is the method that works. All right, so after many headaches, everything is back. I mean, this is the control arm. So we got brand new control arm. We got the brand new thing, struts assembly. Now I'm gonna go ahead and put the engine mount back. The same one we took it out. You know, of course, to tighten these bolts, especially that one right there, you have to jack up the suspension from the control arm itself. Jack it up until it comes off the jack stand there, so you know it's resting on the suspension alone. Then you can go ahead and tighten that stuff up to spec. My spec is good and tight. Okay, so passenger side is done. Everything is back. You know, when we put it down, we're gonna still check for the torque on the nuts on top there. Once we put it down on the ground, maybe remove the nuts, let us see it, and retorque them. Sometimes I do it like this because I don't want to forget. Sometimes in the midst of a job, you may be distracted and you forgot to tighten those because you're waiting to set them on the ground. That's your plan, but you may forget. So I always tighten them while I'm there. Before I leave there, I'm already good, so no matter what. But to do it the best way, I believe you have to let it sit, rest on its own weight, and then torque it down. So these are 14 millimeters, so I'm thinking torque is going to be what? I don't know, about 25 to 30 pounds. Yeah, all right.